Born in 1916, Henry Singleton came from a family of modest means, growing up on a small farm just outside of tiny Hazlet, Texas. A brilliant young man with a gift for numbers, Singleton couldn't have come of age at a more opportune time. Arriving at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology at the very dawn of the computer era, by the time he graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, he was already a world-class mathematician. He would go on to serve his country by developing technology that helped Allied ships avoid radar detection and win World War II. After the war, Singleton worked as a research engineer at North American Aviation, Hughes Aircraft, and Litton Industries, where in the late 50s, he invented an inertial guidance system which is still used in commercial and military aircraft today. But this was only the beginning of Henry Singleton's remarkable story. At the age of 43, after what could be described as an extraordinary career, he founded an electronics conglomerate called Teledyne and became one of history's greatest CEOs.
I can think of no individual in the history of business that I have ever known or read about who was quite the equal of Henry Singleton.
They made 125 acquisitions, and I don't think any other chief executive could have made 125 acquisitions and had them all turn out as well as they did for Teledyne.
And I think one of the things that I think speaks so well to Henry Singleton is that, I think the new Teledyne, after being spun out, which I thought was in the mid-90s, I think has compounded at 20% annually since then, and I believe the other businesses have done nearly as well.
From the standpoint of what Henry Singleton did, really more than anyone else, was to be incredibly conscious of how much value he was getting for how much value he was giving.
Henry not only spoke his mind, but he could tell whether someone was dishonest, and he wouldn't have anything to do with them.
He didn't care how that all the rest of the world did it. He just thought, well, they're wrong, I'll do it my way. And when Henry thought he was right, he was usually right.
He really left businesses that continued to grow their value at remarkable rates. And I think that's really a powerful legacy to leave.
Henry did all this over his career, and he, in effect, wrote the playbook for us to follow.
I don't think we'll ever see the likes of Henry Singleton again. He was really one of a kind.
A great CEO needs to adapt to changes in the business landscape. He needs to be willing to pivot. Flexibility was an asset that Bill Anders, former CEO of General Dynamics, possessed and practiced. Like Henry Singleton, Anders earned a degree in engineering and served in the military. After graduation from the Naval Academy in 1955, he became a fighter pilot and was chosen to join NASA's elite astronaut corps. He was the lunar module pilot on the 1968 Apollo 8 mission to the moon. To his credit, he snapped the historic photograph known to the world as Earthrise, a stunning icon that appeared on the covers of Time and Life. In 1989, Anders took the helm of General Dynamics, one of the country's largest defense contractors. As a former astronaut, an Air Force general, and engineer, he broke the mold of an industry that had not changed in decades.
And the best example of that was the sale of General Dynamics' fighter plane business to Lockheed.
Bill's a fighter pilot. He'll never sell the F-16 division. So, to my surprise, even though I'd told friends he would never do it, the fighter pilot sold the fighter division because that was right for General Dynamics and right for the shareholders.
Katharine Graham was 46 years old in 1963 when she became CEO of the Washington Post following the tragic death of her husband. And suddenly she found herself chief executive in charge of a Fortune 500-sized company. She was, understandably, terrified. Graham rose to this monumental challenge, and in 1971, on the advice of her board, filed to take the company public in order to raise acquisition capital. Less than a week later, the newspaper became embroiled in the Pentagon Papers crisis, which presented her with the opportunity to publish a highly controversial internal Pentagon assessment of the war in Vietnam that a court had barred the New York Times from publishing. The Nixon administration threatened to challenge the company's broadcast licenses if it published the report. Faced with the prospect of scuttling her own stock offering, Graham decided to go ahead and print the story. Ultimately, the administration backed down. The offering, which raised $16 million, was a success, and the Post's editorial reputation was made. Katharine Graham was unprepared to become a CEO, yet with the power of conviction, one of the most essential values that a chief executive can possess, she became a truly great one.
She knew she wanted to take over the paper, and she knew she didn't want to sell it. And my father was a glamorous figure, very brilliant, had put the empire together, so to speak. She'd spent most of her time taking care of us. So it was a major change for her. When she started, she was the only woman in the Fortune 500 in a company of that size. And she really would go through weeks when she wouldn't talk to another woman. So it was a very, very odd position to be in. And I think therefore she inspired quite a few younger women.
A great CEO needs to think independently, and sometimes a great CEO needs a contrary point of view. There is no greater contrarian than the man who may be the greatest investor of all time, Warren Buffett, CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett was born in 1930 in Omaha, Nebraska, where his grandfather ran a grocery store and his father was a stockbroker and a congressman. He had been an entrepreneur all his life, all the way back to his early days as a paperboy. After graduating from the University of Nebraska at age 20 and being rejected by Harvard Business School, Buffett found himself at Columbia University. He studied under the legendary Benjamin Graham. It was then that Buffett's true genius began to emerge, and he was awarded the first A+ in the professor's class in more than 20 years.
Warren Buffett's record at Berkshire, both as a CEO and an investor, is remarkable. And it stems from deep contrarianism, remarkable in a world where mutual fund managers own things for less than a single year.
Warren Buffett makes complicated problems simpler. And a lot of times people complicate things. And that, I think, is a real skill.
As you know, he's brilliant. He's not the Oracle of Omaha for no reason.
Warren said to me the other day, at age 88, I said, even if I couldn't participate, I'd love to just sit here for 30 more years and watch it.
The son of a school teacher and a research engineer, John Malone was born and raised in Milford, Connecticut. As a teenager growing up in the late 50s, he exhibited keen entrepreneurial instincts, buying, refurbishing, and selling used radios. John Malone, gifted student athlete, earned a combined degree in economics and electrical engineering from Yale. And he received a master's and PhD degrees in operations research at Johns Hopkins. In fact, John Malone's entire career can be thought of as an extended exercise in hyper-efficient value engineering. As CEO of Telecommunications Inc., Malone brought an unusual combination of talents to bear, including analytical ability, financial sophistication, technical savvy, boldness, and above all, a relentless practicality.
I will begin by quoting Charlie Munger. He said, obviously, Malone is something of a genius.
That's the biggest brain you'll ever encounter in life and in your career.
In the 40 years I've known John, there's not one day where I haven't thought he was the smartest guy in the room.
If you look at how he joined this kind of struggling, nearly bankrupt cable company, basically restored it to its health and then started to very profitably grow it.
I've been around a long time, and I've had the privilege of hanging around and working with some of the most talented people in the world, and I put John in a class by himself.
There is a close kinship between the advantages of practicality and the virtues of frugality. Like John Malone, Tom Murphy, legendary CEO of Capital Cities, employed both with extraordinary skill for 30 years. Murphy was born in Brooklyn in 1925, served in the Navy during World War II, attended Cornell University on the GI Bill, and graduated from Harvard. He took the helm at Capital Cities at the height of the conglomerate era when the conventional wisdom was that diversification and synergy would make corporations more profitable and immune to economic downturns. But Murphy couldn't have been more unconventional. In his words, the goal was not to have the longest train, but to be the first to arrive at the station and use the least amount of fuel to do it. Murphy moved deliberately. He focused on very few acquisitions, and his train did indeed arrive early when in January of 1986, Capital Cities of Albany purchased the ABC television network for almost $3.5 billion. The minnow swallowed the whale.
In our family, Tom was held in a position of reverence. My dad worked for Tom for 3 or 4 decades. I can never recall my father ever being upset with Tom or anything other than looking forward to getting into work the next day.
Tom Murphy instilled an incredible culture of frugality at Capital Cities, and it goes back to the first TV station that they owned, which was located in a dilapidated building in Albany, New York. And Murphy was told by the owner that he needed to go out and paint the building so that advertisers would give them business. And Murphy's response was to paint the 2 sides facing the road.
I think their feeling was if you don't spend $1, you just earned $1. Tom and my dad never took themselves too seriously. Whenever there was credit to go around, Tom and my dad were very clear to give the credit to other people and celebrate with other people. It was never about them.
Dick Smith was a CEO with honesty, strength, and character. He encouraged dissenting opinions. That, in fact, defined his leadership style. His integrity gave him the credibility to achieve great success. Smith was born in Newton, Massachusetts in 1924, the eldest son in a close-knit family. He went to prep school in Cambridge and graduated from Harvard in 1946. After serving as a naval engineer during World War II, he decided to help his father run the family business, a chain of movie theaters called General Cinemas. When Smith was just 32, his father made him a full partner. Smith expanded the company's theater circuit to suburban shopping malls. And with this move, he quickly became the pioneer and leader in the business.
The Smith family's large ownership at General Cinema allowed Dick Smith to run it somewhat like a family business with a high degree of integrity. This included allowing his management team members to openly disagree with him.
At the board meeting, I said, Dick, you know where I stand on this? And he said, I know, Woody. And I said, can I speak up? And he said, of course you can. And I told him afterwards this was the proudest day of my relationship. We had a relationship that was between friends, but it was really based business-wise on mutual trust and sense of responsibility and smarts.
Like Henry Singleton, Bill Sturritz came from humble beginnings. He ran out of funds after his freshman year, joined the Navy, and became an ace poker player, a skill that gave him the means to pay his school tuition. Sturritz began his career stocking cereal boxes on shelves for the Pillsbury Company. Then, in 1964, he landed in the grocery products division at Ralston Purina. By 1971, as general manager of the division, he increased profits 50-fold through the relentless introduction of new products and extensions. Purina Puppy and Cat Chow were two of the most successful launches in the history of the industry. Sturritz was named CEO in 1981 and applied his poker skills to a bold capital allocation strategy. Bill had the uncanny ability to read personalities, calculate odds, and place large bets. And the odds were in his favor.
Some have defined him as an opportunist. I don't think that's accurate because an opportunist is an exploitive term. Bill is opportunistic. Someone needs to be opportunistic enough to listen when opportunity knocks, because when it does so, it sometimes does so faintly. And that defines Bill Sturritz.
I think about the theme of his life being against all odds.
Bill Sturritz is a terrific example of the success that comes from running companies in the Singleton way. He did it not at just one corporate entity, but he did it at a succession of them.
The companies that Bill sponsored during his career are scattered all over St. Louis. Nestle, Purina, Energizer, Edgewell, Ralcor, and most significantly from my perspective, Post.
This is somebody who thought independently, he thought on his own. He didn't waste his capital or his shareholders' capital on a bunch of fancy advisors. He never sought out the press. So I think he really embodies a lot of the traits as well as the deserved success that we're looking to honor.
The advice he would give a young person aspiring to be a CEO to think about how we build a better society, not just how we build a better company.
Henry forged the roadmap that so many young people can follow today. Over a 10 or a 20-year period of time, you can make profound change by staying focused is going to really be an important lesson.
All of these CEOs were intelligent contrarians. For all of them, the North Star was long-term value creation. But Henry Singleton was the first to blaze this trail.